Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. We Taylor and I are gathering together for this Monday Night Football 2-game slate.
We're gathering together.
That's right. We are gathering. That's a gathering. 2 people, it's enough. Anyways, so we're coming together. Is it better coming together for this 2-game slate? No showdown videos today for us because we have the benefit of 2 games. So we're going to break it down and hopefully help you all win some money. If we do that, please give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Helps us know we're doing something right. Helps you get alerted to future videos just like this. I would imagine we're all going to be playing NFL DFS tonight because, like Taylor just said a second ago before we got going here, no baseball today. So, and the NBA isn't back just yet. So here we go. Let's get some money. Starting with the quarterback position, we're going to go position by position here. We have Geno up top as the mega chalk at 35% ownership, and he comes in with the best projection. But honestly, it's kind of like a 3-way tie as far as like who looks the best. Tyler Huntley is right behind him in terms of projection. And then Jared Goff is right there too. So of that trio, who do you like the most?
It's probably Goff for me as of now, but subject to change between now and lock. They're at home, they're favored, highest implied on the slate. They're pretty heavy, which is frustrating for Goff, but we only have about 1 game. Seattle historically has been pretty vulnerable through the air. Defense looks better this season, but they have had a pretty easy schedule to begin the season. So Goff, as of now, looks like the guy I'm getting to the most. He's the most expensive, but hardly cumbersome at 6'4". I am interested in that Huntley projection. If he's going to be lower owned, it looks like Smith and Goff are going to be more popular as of now. Huntley does project really well. He does have rushing upside, of course. Starting for Miami, good offense in theory, good weapons around him. He's an upgrade over Skylar Thompson. To say the least. I don't know. It's hard to have a ton of faith. He is new to this offense. He's only been on the team for less than 2 weeks. A lot of ways this can go wrong, but the matchup against Tennessee is okay enough. Obviously, you can play anyone on a 4-game slate. The guy I'm getting to is Will Levis. The field agrees, but yeah, it's hard to have a hard stance either way. I think the top 3 all look pretty good.
Yeah, I think if there's a full fade in this 4-pack here, it's going to be Levis. He could always make me look stupid just because the Dolphins. I mean, honestly, if the Dolphins quarterback situation does not improve, obviously the Titans could be working with a short field and a lot of opportunities. So there is that if you want to make a case for Levis. And also he's the cheapest quarterback on the board. And he's also carrying the least ownership. So for tournaments, that's fine. I don't really want to do it. I'm mostly focusing on Geno and Huntley. So I'm kind of going away from your Goff play here. If you're right about the Seahawks just facing easy opponents and that's what's making their numbers look good, then I'm probably gonna be wrong here because they're at home. They have the best, probably most trustworthy offense as things stand right now. So I don't deny that. And you make a good point. Goff's price and possibly the matchup too is bringing his ownership down to only the second most owned guy, and he's really just splitting with Tyler Huntley. Still. The matchup does not look good. The Seahawks pass defense has been very, very good against quarterbacks. They rank 3rd on the year in fantasy points allowed per game, under 10. So I'm going to kind of lean into that. I'm just going to say, okay, fine. Seattle's pass defense is really good. Let's just say that sticks. And then Goff is going to be pushing for 25% ownership, and hopefully that'll be a bad move. So that's where I'm just going to take a stand. And then I'm going to split my ownership between Geno and Huntley. Huntley, like you said, is just all about the legs. He had a game 3 years ago against the Packers. We had 35 fantasy points. So in recent years, last 2 years, he got some spot starts. He's probably hovering around 10 to 15 fantasy points. Probably more so what we can expect in this matchup because the Titans are not a bad defense. But still, yeah, on a tiny slate, Huntley is going to be the 3rd lowest owned quarterback. He's 5.5K. I think he's definitely in play. And then Geno just has the best matchup on the board. The Lions have not been good against fantasy quarterbacks. They are bottom 15, and they especially have been very bad against fantasy wide receivers. So I think Geno is in for a solid game. I think the thing I like to do the most though is get to Huntley and then still get exposure to the Seattle passing game, but getting away from that chalky ownership with Geno. That said, Geno and Huntley look the best to me. At running back, I
just wanted to point out real quick, the Seahawks defense is probably improved. They hired a defensive coordinator from the Ravens to be the head coach, but the QBs they've played are Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. Like
Yeah.
maybe the worst 3 quarterbacks in the league that have started games this season.
That's
So
true.
I am not going to crown them just yet. I'm willing to play Jared Goff against them, especially given, it's indoors, it's in a dome. It's a great environment in general. This is easily the best offense they've played. So Detroit looks pretty good to me still.
Okay, I'll counterpoint. Goff has not been very good this year.
Like I said, they've been pretty run heavy.
Yeah,
and stuff.
He hasn't topped 16 fantasy points yet this season. And then even if the Seahawks aren't like some dominant defensive team, it still doesn't really look like a very good matchup. So I think there's good points on both sides. You could play both sides of it and everything. We're just going to go, separate ways at quarterback, I think. At running back, you got Devon Achane coming in with the best projection, the most ownership. That just looks like chalk. I'm going to eat all day. I don't really care. Like if I was, building showdown lineups, he'd be in the captain conversation for sure, and I'd want him in basically every lineup I do. For 2-game slate, it's going to be the same. Obviously, we don't captain anybody here, but I'm going to eat the chalk. I think that's a very, very dangerous fade on this slate, just because nobody has his ceiling. The Lions guys, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, both look good, but they also split and cut into each other. And then in theory, the Lions have like a very tough run defense. So Seattle guys don't look very appealing to me at all. Let me see where it's at. It's not good. Lions have the number 1 defense against fantasy running backs, allowing just over 8 fantasy points per game. That does not mean an explosive Kenneth Walker can't bust one and make us look stupid. And he is just 6.3, but he's not healthy. He's coming off an injury. So he might split the workload with Zach Charbonnet anyways. So I'm just not into the Seattle running backs at all. I'm going to fade them probably almost completely. If I get a tiny bit of exposure to Walker just because he is explosive. And then Titans running backs, I don't love it, but it's possible Pollard and Spears could get involved as receivers if they trail. And worth noting, Miami's weakness would be their run defense. So you could buy into the narrative that Miami's going to continue to struggle, and then the Titans could have success on the ground. So I think Pollard and Spears are still in play, and I would obviously have a lean towards Pollard just because he feels safer.
Yeah, Achane's easily the RB1 on this slate. As of now, he's in 100% of my lineups. Burned us all last week against Seattle when they couldn't do anything offensively. In theory, they're in a better spot tonight at home with a better QB in there. Mostert's still out. Let's see what he played. He played 74% of the snaps last week, the highest mark of the season. It's really just him and Jeff Wilson in that backfield that are getting work. I'm not too scared about the one bad game last week, and it's a 2-game slate. So Achane looks like the best play on the board at any position to me. After that, I slightly prefer Walker to the Detroit running backs in the same price range. Like I said, it's in a dome. He played 66% of the snaps in week 1. Don't know if he will coming off the oblique again this week, but he's in. I assume he's going to play and start and be the top guy here over Charbonnet, who's typically more of a pass-catching third-down guy anyway. I'm not getting to Charbonnet. He's a little bit pricey for the role he's going to play with Walker in there. I really don't see a need to get to him at all, honestly. Even if they fall into a hole, whatever, that's like a gamble I'm willing to take. The Detroit guys look good. Like they're next on my list over the Tennessee guys. But, splitting the work, it's kind of hard to predict. David Montgomery presumably is the goal line guy there still. So no qualms with them, but Achane number 1 for me, and then Walker number 2.
Yeah, and as you kind of alluded to before, Huntley, in theory, I mean, I can't imagine he's any worse than Skylar Thompson, and he's just got more experience and has looked better when he has gotten spot starts. So I would say you can look at, if you're soured on Achane at all, you can look at number 1. I think their offense gets, a lift from Huntley for sure. And number 2, he's been really active as a receiver. He's had 5+ targets in every game. He's had 3+ receptions in every game. So even if Achane doesn't explode or have a ton of running room, or even if the volume really isn't there for whatever reason, I think his overall touches will be fine. And I just don't see the upside in fading him. I think as far as like punts go, I don't see anybody on the board. I guess the only guy I would really consider, I guess you could go look at Tajay again. Like I was saying, maybe Jeff Wilson, just because Mostert's out. He could get a little bit more work than expected. Let's see what he did last week. He got hurt in that game, didn't he? When Mostert was out, or was that the game before? No, I think it was week 3.
He got hurt in week 2.
Okay, so he played that game. He had 2 catches and he got hurt. And then last week he had 3 runs for 14 yards. I think they're just going to ride Achane, but I think if you want to do a punt, I would look at Tajay or or Jeff Wilson, but I'm not really interested in either. All right, moving on to wide receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown tops the projection list. He also is carrying the most ownership. I don't know if I have a problem with that just because of who he is and the volume he's going to get. But like I said, I'm not very into Goff. I'm just going to buy into the Seahawks matchup. And I think the way the Lions are going to have to win is going to be on the ground and kind of more of a methodical offense, which is what they've been doing for the first 3 weeks anyways. I'm not saying you have to fade Amon-Ra St. Brown. 8.2K is kind of a discount for who he can be. He's been really good the last few weeks too. 25 and 20 fantasy points. So the role is there. 19 targets in week 2. Absolutely disgusting. So he can get there either way. I just think if he's going to be almost 60% owned, I'm going to entertain going a different route. DK Metcalf is my favorite play on the board at 6.8K. I think he's got the best matchup. Second favorite play, and a guy I'm going to have a lot of exposure to and be way overweight if this ownership sticks, is going to be Tyreek Hill. 24% ownership. I think the Huntley thing is big. I think it helps Miami out a lot. So Tyreek Hill, I cannot believe that is actually going to be that way. If that stays, I mean, honestly, maybe it's Tyreek that's going to be my favorite play at wide receiver because 24% is crazy. I would be like double that, triple that, way over him as opposed to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But we could talk about some of these other guys a little bit too. I want to get your thoughts on this top trio of wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't have any qualms with any of them. Amon-Ra target machine. They're at home in the dome. All the Seattle pass catchers look pretty good. JSN was down last week after his huge 16 targets in week 2, but still played 88% of the snaps. Tyler Lockett only played 56%. So I'm still on the JSN side of that split. Personally, I think both are fine plays though. They're both super cheap. I know I'm supposed to talk about the high-end guys, but I kind of like all 3 Seahawks in general in this game. And I'm with you on Tyreek. He and Waddle. Waddle's only 5,800. I'm going to be playing a lot of Huntley, it looks like. So I will naturally be playing the 2 Dolphins primary pass catchers with him. It's just a very easy stack to get to, especially with Tyreek down at 7.9 after being 9K to open the season. So good discount on him. Amon-Ra is the top guy by default, but I don't think it's a huge gap between DK and Hill either.
No. How about some of these mid-range guys? You obviously spoke about Waddle already. Tyler Lockett versus JSN. I think I prefer JSN there for sure. I think he just is going to offer more of a ceiling. I'm totally fine with Waddle for the reasons both of us mentioned. I think as far as Lions receivers go, I would be much more interested in Jameson Williams just because I feel like if the Seahawks defense holds firm and is what they've been, I think it's a little bit more likely for the Lions to get a little bit lucky on a big play or two with somebody like, Jay Williams, as opposed to St. Brown just dominating them with volume. So I think since he's going to be half the ownership, I think I prefer him. He's way cheaper at 5.8K. So I like him quite a bit. The Titans passing game is extremely tough to trust with Will Levis under center. But Nuke and Ridley are both pretty cheap for what their roles are. I mean, Ridley had 1 catch for 9 yards last week. That was just disgusting. Miami is not a good matchup either, by the way. I mean, the way they've had to play with Tua out might impact a little bit as far as being more of a ball control offense and also playing from behind in the last couple of games. But still, Titans might have to throw in this game. So Ridley at 5.9 is okay. I think Nuke at 5.3, if he's healthy, is he actually at 100%?
I don't know. I think he scored last week, didn't he?
Yeah, 6 catches, 7 targets last week. So I think we can trust that. At 5.3, he's one of my favorite values here, actually. And I'm not really looking at anybody far below there. These guys are just total GPP flyers. Treylon Burks, is he even going to play that much? He's still kind of behind Tyler Boyd. Khalif Raymond, I guess he could get a deep ball or something. I don't know. I think you're just playing with fire. These are more like showdown guys. So I'm really looking at Nuke or Waddle or Jay Will for value.
Yeah, and Lockett, you can throw in, I think, 5K flat. The cheapest of the whole group. Happy to get to him. It looks like Seattle's going to be chalky. Like you said, Geno's going to be chalky. I assume his pass catchers will be as a result, but still getting to a lot of them because he and JSN are just underpriced. I mentioned Waddle. I like him quite a bit. I don't mind the Tennessee guys, even Tyler Boyd for 4-2. I think among the punts, he'd be my favorite. Let's see. Boyd played 70% of the snaps last week. He's been over 70 in each game so far. Obviously, they've kind of brought Hopkins along still early. He hasn't even played half the snaps in any of the games yet. But, Boyd, given how often he sees the field, I think he's not the worst punt in the world on this slate.
Yeah, if the snaps are there, I'm okay with it for sure. Moving on
Let's
to
talk about tight end.
I know. I was going to say, moving on to a terrible, terrible position. We have tight end where Sam Laporta, in theory, looks like the number one play. He has not been good on the year. The targets have not been there. No touchdowns. He's had more than 2 catches one time in 3 weeks. He's obviously also been banged up a little bit too. It's been bad. I would imagine this is a pretty good get right spot for him. Seattle has been unkind to opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers, but I think tight end, it's a less worrisome spot. They've been actually bottom 10 against tight end. So maybe that's something. And just the fact that like the kind of like the greasy wheel kind of thing. So like Laporta is 5.7K, which is too cheap for who he can be. And there's no other tight end really to speak of on the slate. So I think everything leads to him being kind of a smash play and a bit of a value when you compare him to all the other passing game options we're looking at. The only problem is there's actually quite a few guys to pay up for on this slate. And he hasn't been good. So if that trend continues and you're just eating 5.7K, that is going to be problematic. The only issue is where else are you going to go at tight end that you feel good about?
Nowhere, Kevin. That's the problem. There's no one else to play at this position, but you kind of have to. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't play Porta in every lineup. I currently is my 4th highest owned tight end in the set that I saved.
Mm-hmm.
The one I have the most is Fant, I guess, just because he's another Seattle pass catcher. In theory, they're playing from behind. He's been okay enough so far, and he's 3.5. So, if you're not playing Laporta, you're essentially punting the position because there's no one else to pay for. Jonnu Smith, same thing. I mentioned liking Huntley on this slate. He's 3.3. Not even playing the most snaps among Miami tight ends. He only played 38% of them last week. They kind of split him between Durham Smythe and Julian Hill, but he looks like the best pass catcher of the group, so he's the one that's most fantasy relevant still. And then Josh Wiley, I guess, for Tennessee, just because he's 2.5, so he's min salary. Titans should have to throw in this game too. Don't love it, of course, but he's a punt and he has legs, so I assume he can run a little bit, and he's cheap.
Yeah, I mean, Font had 6 catches last week, so I mean, you're either getting that or you're getting what he had the previous week, which was 1 catch.
It's tight end. There's really no opportunity cost. Like, even with Laporta, like, you're paying up for a guy who could get 3 points.
How do you feel about this? How do you feel about going probably like 60-40? 60 Laporta, 40 Julian Hill? Because here's the thing. All these other guys, they're the same guy. They're the same as far as like the floor you can get. I mean, even Font, like, what's his ceiling really? Like 12 fantasy points? Like, it's not great. He's just not going to get a lot of the opportunity in Seattle's passing game. Detroit so far has been good against tight ends. The Titans have been good against tight ends. And obviously when you start looking at not so great matchup, you have other guys eating target share. And then also the guy you're talking about isn't even good and also in a timeshare. Like, look at Jonnu Smith, explosive player technically. And he did have a really big week 2, I think it was, when he was playing with a backup and he had like 6 catches for 53 yards. But that's like his ceiling, it seems, in this offense with Waddle and Achane and Tyreek demanding all this stuff. And then he's also splitting work with, like you said, Hill and who's the other guy, Smythe. So Hill played 39% of the snaps last week. He looks like a safer play than Smythe at this point. And honestly, if you're looking at him versus Jonnu, you're paying $800 less for what looks like a toss-up. So if Julian Hill can get me what he got last time out, 4.4 fantasy points, that might be enough. This tight end slate is that bad. So I do think because of his supposed floor and ceiling, Laporta looks like a smash play at the position, but it's going to be tough to get everybody you want and get the obvious tight end play. So
I think I'd
by the
rather
way,
pay up elsewhere and just punt tight end and hope Laporta gets 8
right.
or something.
Exactly.
Right?
So I'm going 60-40. 60% going to play Laporta. And here's another reason why, by the way. Obviously, he has the best projection. That should shock nobody. And he's super talented. So you'd imagine eventually he would get it going. He's not owned right now. He's only carrying 24% ownership. You could have a major advantage if he pops off for like 20 fantasy points and 75% of the field doesn't have him in their lineups. It's crazy. So where you go to make that possible and like have it all fit together, that's up to you. But I do think that if we can figure it out, maybe that means not paying for Tyreek and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't know. It doesn't feel great to do that. But yeah, so if I do punt tight end, I think Julian Hill is a viable punt at 2.5K. Opens things up a little bit. If I go down there and I can finish my lineup out with Jahmyr Gibbs or DK or what have you, depending on how you build your lineup. So yeah, tight end sucks. All right, so defenses here. Honestly, all these defenses look okay. Like you don't really need to back yourself into a corner on this slate. That's something we talk about every week, no matter what size the slate is. I mean, except for Showdown, where it's probably more of an ownership play. But for this, I would ignore the ownership. I think the Dolphins, in my opinion, look like the best defense to play. They are the most expensive. They have the best projection. They're going to be the highest owned, but they're facing Will Levis, who finds a new way to turn the ball over every single week. So I would imagine he's going to get sacked. He got sacked 8 times last week by the Packers. So he's going to get sacked. He's going to turn the ball over. Maybe they'll get a defensive touchdown. So Miami looks awesome. And then you could look at the Lions as leverage against the chalky Seattle offense. You could look at the Seahawks. Like, are we going to buy into Seattle being this good? You could do that. And then obviously on the other side, Tyler Huntley starting for the Dolphins, that could obviously go poorly. So everybody's in play. I think if you ignore ownership, which I'm going to do, Miami looks like the play to me.
Yeah, that's pretty clear, I think, with Will Levis being a turnover machine. Yeah, Detroit's a little bit cheaper. Like you said, they're facing Seattle. They've been a good defense so far this season. Don't mind Tennessee. Like, there's a chance the Tyler Huntley thing is a complete flop and they get nothing going, just like last week. And then Seattle's cheap, so whatever. Like, I don't know. Detroit looks the second best. I guess Seattle's not even that cheap compared to them. So do whatever you want. It's Miami, heavy chalk. Defense is not worth talking about.
It's true. Do whatever you want, indeed. All right. So just to summarize, Taylor's big on Goff and the Lions. And I'm probably going.
Not really, but.
Well, I mean, as far as ownership goes, it seems like Goff is a leverage play at quarterback at least.
I think Huntley might be the one I like the most.
Yeah.
Ownership considered.
So this is where I'm at currently. I'm going Huntley. I'm just buying that Huntley is a lot better than Skylar Thompson, which is something I actually believe. And he can run. I don't know. Skylar Thompson can too, but he really didn't display that very well. But Huntley is he can be a pretty efficient fantasy player when he puts his mind to it. He has so many weapons. This is the most explosive arsenal of weapons he's ever had. So I like his chances to get it going here. And the value and the ownership all looks good to me too. So, I mean, I'm doing like full Miami stack here with Huntley, Achane, Tyreek, and Julian Hill and the Dolphins defense. I'm not completely sold on Julian Hill versus Laporta yet. I'll have to make that decision. But right now, that's what I'm doing. And then I'll probably wrap it up with something like maybe David Montgomery, just because he's such a good bet to score a touchdown like every week, and they split the workload in Detroit. Other guys I'm really looking to jam in are going to be DK and Jameson Williams, just because they have explosive ability. Matchups be damned. And then I think the one of the better values I noted on earlier is going to be Tyjae Spears. If we are to believe Tennessee trails, I think he could be a factor as a receiver out of the backfield. Any last words or flag plants you want to do for everybody watching?
Just play Tyler Huntley, or don't, because I want to play him and I don't want him to be too owned. So maybe not.
Yeah, I guess we'll see everybody at the top of the GPPs then.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. If it does, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.